Hi everyone, Michael Sandler here, best-selling author and your host on Inspire Nation. Check out our website where we'll be posting podcasts, tips, videos, blogs, and more at inspirenationshow.com. Today we have a very special guest. Her name is Betsy Chasse. She's an internationally known filmmaker and author, most notably for co-writer, director, and producer of What the Bleep Do We Know? In 2014, she produced the acclaimed Song in the New Earth, which premiered at the Seattle International Film Festival. She's authored 4 books, including What the Bleep Do We Know?, Discovering the Endless Possibilities to Altering Your Everyday Reality, and in 2014, Tipping Sacred Cows. She writes often for Huffington Post, Modern Mom, and Intent.com. She is currently in production of a new feature documentary about coaching featuring Jack Canfield, John Gray, and Marcy Shimoff. Welcome to the show, Betsy. Are you ready to shine?
Yes, I hope I'm already shining.
Woohoo! I think you
shine.
are. and you're there outside in your favorite red rocking chair.
I know.
How could you not be shining?
It's true. I work here. I write here. This is my spot. So I work really hard to create this sort of lush as we can because we're in California and there's a drought environment that I can create with. And I have my birds and my kitty cats and my dogs and everyone. We all kind of hang out. And it's gloomy today here. We've got June gloom in July for Southern California, but I'm enjoying it actually.
Can we get any moisture out of the June gloom?
God, that would be so great, but no. Sadly, it's just clouds. Yeah,
Well,
it's just clouds.
I was hearing the birds before we started, and I was syncing up our audio, and it was so cool to see the birds chirping on my recorder. So I'm hoping that on cue, they will come in and join us.
They might. Sometimes they do. When I get going on something, there's a few birds around here that will start making a lot of noise, and it's them like, they clearly either agree or they're not agreeing. I talk to them often. I have corn growing. I don't know if anybody can see it, but in my back row, I have corn and
beautiful.
Sunflowers, and so I go back there and talk to them all the time because, they have a lot of input. They have a lot to say.
That makes sense. We were on book tour 4 or 5 years ago. I don't know. It's a blur at this point. And we had met up with one of our good friends, Robert Mirabal. He's a 2-time Grammy Award-winning flautist from the Taos Pueblo. And he had given us native indigenous corn seeds. And we planted them, found ourselves out on book tour. And so we had these planters with us that were pulling out of the trailer every day at each motel as we grew awesome. Corn on our journey.
That is awesome. I don't know that I would go that far, but I love growing food. I love that. I mean, this year it's a little strange because I planted different things that I would normally plant, but I'm kind of exploring, pumpkin. I used to, when I lived in Washington State, had a big garden with pumpkins and corn, but here in California, I'm just kind of trying different things. I mean, of course, I have the tomatoes and the herbs and all that kind of stuff. But I love gardening. For me, gardening is a meditation. People always ask me, well, what is your practice? And I'm not typically a disciplined practicer, but I do find that walking around and touching what I'm growing and digging my hands in the dirt and planting seeds is a really peaceful, meditative practice for me.
My wife would completely agree. That's her solace. That's her it makes it feel grounded and at peace. Mm-hmm. For myself, maybe I'm a little bit more of the young side of things on this one. So when we were struggling with our health in Maui, which we moved from Maui a few months ago, and the air just didn't feel right in the house, I'd go outside and we had some beautiful cactus growing that we were actually being rained out. And so the cactus were being overgrown with weeds. And so I enjoyed pulling the weeds.
It's great. It's a great metaphor for life, gardening, to me, because you think about it, you got to plant a seed, you've got to care for it, you've got to, what are you planting together? Like, I'm one of those, plant carrots with tomatoes, or plant, what plants work really well together, mm-hmm. and then help it so you don't get as many weeds, or, what weeds, when you're pulling the weeds. It's all part of life. It's what you're doing in life, really.
Oh, and it's interesting because I'm coming at it from this place of, bless my food, give thanks for this, give that, so that growing, and yet I'm pulling weeds. And so I'm going, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I'm not. I say thank you, but this is not where you're going to grow. You're not welcome here. It's funny, when I moved into the house that I'm in, I think that it had been empty for a little while.
Hmm.
Um, and it had this big play structure in the back. And all the creatures had moved in. Like we had possums and squirrels, and birds had built bird nests all through the play structure.
Oh, wow.
And it was an interesting first couple of weeks because my cat had got attacked by a possum, and there was this whole, I had to come back in the backyard and, look at this possum because then my dog, I share a story about it in my book. The dog gets a possum. And so I had to come into the backyard and just sit down and just say, listen, everybody, we all have to find a way to get along in here. You don't have to leave just because we moved in, but you're gonna have to realize that these animals now are welcome, and so we all have to just work it out. And it was interesting because it sort of mellowed out in the yard. Like the birds kind of didn't completely disappear, but they sort of
Yeah.
moved out of the play structure because the kids were playing in the play structure. And we all kind of found new places to be, and we all found our own little niche again. But it was really funny in the beginning because I think the yard was just really, the animals, all creatures all knew this yard was safe. And so they kind of, so now I can look up and I have a possum. His name is Henry. He walks by every now and then. And we have squirrels, and now the squirrels and the dogs play this fun. We have power lines behind us. The squirrels and the dogs play the fun game of the squirrel gets in the middle of the power line and goes like neener neener neener, and then the dogs twist it back and forth, and they just have, it's like a total blast out here now. So,
Excellent, excellent. I like
and
it.
it's
You.
peaceful to watch. You just kind of, it's, if I'm writing or I'm working,
Hmm.
and we have doves, and the doves will come and sit together, and I can always look up and go, oh, hey doves, how's it going? It's like, for me, it's like my own little world.
Little sanctuary.
Yeah.
I like it. I
Yeah.
like it. And I think being outdoors, if you can find a way to do that, most people either haven't tried it or haven't found a way to do it. What a creative space you've got if you can get outdoors.
Yeah. Well, for me, being out, I mean, I'm barefoot all the time, and I feel like even just being outside, I mean, it gets really hot here.
Hmm.
I mean, of course, probably get other places, but we, in the summer, we can get up to 100 degrees, and it's nice because I have air conditioning in the house. But I still would rather just be out. Oh, one of my little birds landed. There's another. Um, it just being outside, being in the trees. I mean, I live in the city, so it's not like we have great trees, but just listening. There's a sort of gentle calming that comes from just getting quiet and listening. And even for me, there's a train, you might hear it. There's a train that goes by, and I love hearing that train, the whistle of the train. It just sort of like moves my heart. Do you hear the dove? He's over there. Hi, dove. He's back there. And it's just getting the sounds. I mean, I close my eyes and I can hear even the trash truck go by, and I can hear, and it kind of just puts me into a really relaxed, calm, creative space, especially if you're going to be writing or doing something creative.
Have you always had a space like this?
I think so. I think I've always worked to create. I lived when I was in my 20s. I lived in this apartment down near Hollywood, and it had this teeny tiny backyard that was probably like a 4x4 deck area.
Hmm.
And I literally dug up the concrete and planted sunflowers and pumpkins in it. And basically took away half of like the sitting area to make this little like small 2x2 foot bed. And then I just put two chairs out there. And I remember one night I was sitting back there, and I had a little teeny tiny chimenea and my little garden and my two chairs and a small table. And this grasshopper came and he landed on one of my sunflowers, and he just sat there. And for like 2 hours, I just sat there and stared at the grasshopper and watching the sun kind of go down around the city, all the apartment buildings blocking it here and there. But, I've really always wanted to create that space.
And I think animals, like I had earlier today, before a series of interviews today, had a butterfly fly that hopped up and it traveled hitchhiked with me for a walk with my wife.
Oh, nice.
And
That's great.
when they come along, when the grasshopper comes to you, when the butterfly, if we can be present in those moments, they're there as little gifts.
Right. Well, I think, I have hummingbird feeders because we have a lot of hummingbirds, and, I mean, I, the people will say, hummingbirds are the messengers to the other side, to the spirit world. And I don't know if that's true or not true, but I do know that whenever a hummingbird comes to one of my feeders, it I instantly look up. Like you see me now, like doing this because I'll just go see what everybody's doing. Like the hummingbird sitting over there now. And what it does for me is it's not a negative distraction. It's a moment of reflection. It's a
Hmm.
moment of seeing deeper in. And I appreciate those moments because otherwise, we're busy people. I mean, I stare at a computer screen all day long. I work all day long. I'm a mom. I got two kids running around. And so for me, nature is the reminder to check out for a minute. It's like if I set a timer on my phone that said, okay, every 5 minutes you're going to do something, you're going to look up. For me, that's one of the things that I love about being outside is that every 5 minutes there's some new sound that can draw me out, and I can just enjoy it. And like watching a hummingbird sit. I mean, the coolest thing is watching a hummingbird sit because they're so, and that reminds me of me. And so it's like, oh, the hummingbird is sitting. I'm going to sit for a minute.
I like it. I like it. And
Yeah.
then when
And
they get going, that sound, the sound
yeah,
goes right through you.
right. Well, and especially when your lives get really busy
Hmm.
and you do so much. Like I was literally talking to my honey this morning about, I just kind of said, God, I haven't really been having a peaceful mind lately. And it's because I've got so much that I'm doing. And he just said, you have to really get that time in, even if it's every hour, 5 minutes or whatever it's going to be to take that practice in, because otherwise your thought monsters, I call them thought monsters, can just run you ragged. I got to do this, I got to do that, I got to do that. I'm 2 weeks ahead of myself scheduling and these things on. And you know that's where stress and anxiety and sickness come from. And so of just forcing myself, even if I don't, some days
Hmm.
I have time in the morning to get up and meditate, and sometimes I don't. I have little kids, so they decide what time I get up, especially in the summer. Um, and so just not being so rigid and saying, oh, I didn't do my morning meditation, I'm screwed for the rest of the day.
Oh no.
Just going like, okay, I didn't do this morning meditation, but you
Hmm.
know what? In 20 minutes, I'm going to go weed the garden for 10 minutes, or I'm going to do this. And giving myself that moments within the day calms everything, not just your mind. It calms your heart. It calms your heart rate. It calms your breathing, all those things that we need for a healthy life.
I love it. And it's so important to be able to either take those pauses or recognize that we're not taking the pause so that then we can feed it back. It's mindfulness, feed it back into ourselves.
Right. Right.
So let's dive back a little bit
Okay.
because I had real fun with your book. Um,
Mm,
no stone is left safe. Maybe is the best way to describe it.
right.
You've
Well, it's
dashed,
called dipping sacred cows for a reason.
yeah, and I mean, from somebody who's wrote what the bleep, it is so far removed from what you would ever expect to hear, and beautiful, because I know for myself I've had sacred cows. I'm a best-selling author, I'm a this, I'm a that, and you get to that moment, that holy shit moment where
Right.
you go, am
What does
I,
all this mean?
yes, and am I living what I'm teaching others when you look
Right.
in the mirror? So, if you can share a little bit of backstory for us about what happened prior to the big
Right.
E word.
Well, so mine is an funny journey, and like everybody's, we always have people. We just life is a trip, man. And so here I get on this movie. What the bleep do we know? It wasn't even called What the Bleep then. It was called something else, and I hadn't read a spiritual book to save my life. I mean, for me, I was living happily in what I call my shoe consciousness,
Hmm.
which is what kind of shoes am I wearing? What kind of car am I driving? And that was my world for a really long time. And then something happened back then. I talk about it in the book that I didn't quite understand, but I had a big shift where I was like, this, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to make crappy movies that nobody sees and doesn't do anything for humanity. And then all of a sudden, Bleep came along, and it was a real genuine quest from all three of us filmmakers. I think people always ask, why was that movie so beloved? And I think it was because we were genuine and authentic in our search for answers. And so the bleep comes out, and all of a sudden, I'm like a guru, and I'm like, look, I just made the movie, man. I mean, like, and but people were really interested in what I had to say. And all of a sudden I'm like opening for Deepak and opening, being traipsed all around the world, being paid lots of money to talk about how to be enlightened. And I got to be really honest with you, for a while that was totally fun. That was awesome. Like it's kind of, ego stroking to fly first class and get paid a lot of money and stand up in front of a lot of people and tell them how to be happy. And but at least for me, and I think for a lot of people, that is only good for so long.
Hmm.
That's only fulfilling for so long before you start to go, something isn't right here. And for me, I started to look at what I was saying versus what my life was. And I realized that there was a big disconnect. And I also felt like there were big disconnects in what I was talking about. Like some of the things I talk about in the book are like kill the ego, living in bliss, some of the spiritual buzzwords. Those are some of the sacred
Yeah.
cows in the book. And I really wanted to know, like, well, is it possible? What does it mean when they say live in bliss? What does it mean, the law of attraction? What do these things really mean? And do they really work? And is it possible? And am I really doing the work necessary to do that? And I found that the truth was I wasn't really living my true authentic self.
How
And
did how
I
did
was
you find this out? It seems like from the book you almost woke up one morning and
right.
woke up.
Well, I mean, it's not like it just happened overnight. What happens, I think, is that just to do a little bit of a nerd out, what I understand, like
Yeah.
one of the big things from Bleep was the idea that we create our reality.
Hmm.
Now, it's not so much, and I know lots of people want to say that we're literally creating the chair that we're sitting in. Well, not really. We went and bought the chair at the store because we liked the color. And so there's some mass to mass action occurring. It's not like we magically, when I leave this house, the chair is still here. Um, but what we are doing really is creating our perception of reality.
Hmm.
We get to decide how we perceive reality. And that perception is based on what we believe, our beliefs.
So in other words, whether you like the chair or not.
Right. Oh, I get to decide whether I like the chair or I don't like the chair. But the chair is the chair. We attach, humans are a meaning attaching machine.
Hmm.
That's how our brain works. We can't process without attaching a meaning to every single thing literally we're going meaning, 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 meaning all the time. And so what I began to see so what happens is that your life is just a reflection of your belief system. And what I began to realize was that I wasn't happy in my life because the beliefs that I was projecting weren't serving me anymore. And so to get clarity on what I believe, because if I'm really going to create my life, then I should really know what I believe. And so I began to examine my sacred cows. And in beginning to examine your sacred cows,
Yeah.
you're going to find you have a lot of them that are not serving you. And as you do that, you begin to throw things to change. For me, it started with where I was living, my marriage, my career, everything. I began to really take stock of and go, is this really true? And do I want this?
Uh-oh.
And things started to fall away.
Did they naturally fall away from asking the question, or did it asking the correct question create, I don't know if I want to call it an energetic shift, but maybe an earthquake that that broke things loose?
Well, I don't know. It's sort of like the chicken and the egg. It's a long process.
Yeah.
And I think people always say to me, when did you get on there? And I always say the moment I came out of the vagina. You're on a journey always. And, hopefully you can become self-reflective. So I've always been self-reflective. I've always been the one to step back and check in and go, wait a second, is this bullshit or is this real? Like, who are you really being? I've always been that person. And so, for me, one of the things that was sort of we have a typically go into crisis. Big shifts happen when we have a crisis most of the time. And my big crisis was divorce. That was the big thing that finally shook me into,
Hmm.
okay. And so the beginning was leading into the decision of getting divorced. And that's still part of the process. That was the beginning of, is this meaningful? Is this what I want? That's the beginning of the conversation. Then once the divorce happened, it was like, well, everything is pretty much cracked wide open at this point. I might as well just go all the way and just see what can I find in myself? Because I wasn't really willing to go back. I wasn't really willing to say, okay, I got divorced. Now I'll just rebuild my life again. I wanted to say, I'm not going to rebuild my life from the same building blocks that I built the last one from. That's just crazy.
How
But
do you
that's
do that
often
though?
what we do. Well, you do that because for me,
Yeah.
there's a game at the end of my book called My Life Sucks. And what I did is I played that game. I said, okay, you don't want to recreate the life
Hmm.
from what you thought you believed. So let's get clear on what it is that you believe, Betsy. What do you believe about life, about love, about relationship, about money, about success, about career, about parenting, all these different things? What are your belief systems around these things? And are they serving you? And what really for me it got down to, what is it that I truly value? And how can I live a life that reflects those values and not the fear and doubt that most of my beliefs are coming from? And
Wow.
so it's very different, because most of the time we react and we live, most of our beliefs about ourselves and the world come back to one core value, which is self-worth. I mean, we essentially live with the sentence, I don't believe I'm worthy of.
Well, and particularly when you've just gone through divorce, that's a
Well,
toughie.
but that was that was the catalyst for me cleaning it up. But I'd lived the I'm not worthy of love, success, happiness, peace, joy for 41 years before that. I mean, you build your belief systems
Hmm.
from a very early age. So, and it's crazy the things. I mean, if you saw the bleep, all the idea about how we attach meaning in the brain, I mean, that's very true. So you're essentially living your reality now based on your experiences in the past. So I write about this in the book. If I had an experience with a guy in a red shirt at some point in my life, I'm
Hmm.
now harboring some belief system about a guy with a red shirt, whether it's conscious or subconscious. For me, I wanted to bring it all conscious so I could say, "Oh, do I really need to like have an attitude around guys in red shirts, or can I let that go?" Because how many men have I thrown out who would have been amazing lovers and amazing relationships because they were wearing a red shirt? Because I had this crazy judgment. That's most of the time kind of irrational, that we don't even realize it. And most of the time based on the fact that I've been telling myself I don't deserve love. So let me find crazy reasons not to have it.
How do you actually do that though? Not the throwing out the guy with the red shirt. How do you realize? I mean, this is powerful to be able to be
Right.
that present with yourself.
Well, for me, it's mindfulness and conscious awareness. So within my game that I play,
Hmm.
I'll ask myself a lot of questions. For instance, if I have an experience or a reaction to something somebody has said to me, I want to examine, well, why am I, why, let me give you a perfect example of this. So
Sure.
I had a book come out last year, Tipping Sacred Cows, and I had to go do a book tour. And I don't love buying dresses and shopping and stuff like that. It's not my favorite thing to do. So I went out and bought a dress, come home, put the dress on, show it to my boyfriend. And I come out and I'm standing there like, ta-da. And he goes and he laughs. And he says, "Oh,
Oh
that's great.
no.
I love the whole cow. I love the whole cow thing you've got going on."
Uh-oh.
And I'm like, "What? Did my boyfriend just call me a cow?" Like, because that's the first, because I think I'm short, I'm fat, I'm not beautiful. That's the story always running in my head. So therefore, my boyfriend just called me a cow. Now, I could have run with that. We could have had a drawn out brawl, screaming fight, you know, no sex or fun dinner that night, just had a huge fight. Or I could just stop and
Hmm.
go, okay, wait a minute. This person loves me and they think that
Yeah.
I'm beautiful. So it's highly unlikely that they're calling me a cow. So before I just run with this crazy thought monster in my head, let me ask him, what did you mean? I'm sorry, I didn't understand that. Could you tell me what you meant? And he said, your dress, it's black and white, like a cow print. Your book, it's called Tipping Sacred Cows. You're kind of doing this whole cow themed. I think it's really clever. I was calling you clever. And so
Safe.
there, there there in that moment is what happens most of the time when we have communication. My friend Francis Rico is a really great teacher,
Hmm.
calls the English language kerplunk, because most of the time we're not actually communicating with each other. You're speaking from your wounds, fears, and doubts,
Hmm.
hearing me through that same filter, and I'm hearing you and speaking to you through those same fears and doubts. And that's all we're doing is we're just vomiting fear and doubt on each other. And so if we just stop
That
for a
sounds like
second
no
and go,
fun.
but that's kind of what we're doing. It's hard. I mean, God, and I still do it so much. Oh my God. But, being able to just interrupt that pattern and go,
Mhm.
well, is there another way that I could see this right now? Is there another perspective? In the Bleep, and Amakaswamy talks about the sea of potentials. And
Yes.
everybody loves to grab a hold of quantum physics and relate it to spirituality. So here's a great metaphor. The
Mhm.
sea of potentials is really a million perspectives, a gazillion that you could have on any one thing. And you get to choose, and you're choosing based on your belief system. So if you keep choosing over and over again, not worthy of love, and when you begin to observe that that's the pattern that you keep choosing, once you have the awareness of the pattern, then you can say, oh, I don't want to live that pattern anymore. And then you can choose a new one. But you have to get conscious awareness around what is my pattern.
So is that because I'm picturing this moment when you may have been called a cow, and I'm picturing cortisol levels, adrenaline have just gone,
Right,
whew.
right, right.
And so this is a very powerful example because at that moment you're only half in control. Your chemistry is in
Take,
for the party.
oh, it is if you're aware of the fact that your chemistry is going to take over. Candace Pert, who was in the Bleep, says
Mhm.
essentially, I think it's like 90 seconds for it to run through your system. So just let it run. That doesn't mean you actually have to respond. You can just let it do its thing.
So is it a practice that you've done in advance of preparing yourself? How is it that you're able to stay present in that moment?
You just have to choose to stay present. It's
Okay.
a choice. It's a control of the mouth mostly. It's oh, I'm about to get really pissed off and say something snarky back. And I have this mouth and I can actually choose to not run it. And
Hmm.
so what I'm going to do right now is let this whole process run and tell my mouth to not move until I've had a clear thought. And so then it's just interrupting the pattern. And so your mouth closes and you listen and you hear him, wait a minute, he just called me a cow. What the hell? I don't know. And you let that go. And then you go, okay, that's one option. Are there others? Because I want to choose one. Oh, there's this other option over here. That one's a little bit calmer and a little more chill. Let me start there. It literally is. I mean, everybody probably in your audience has seen that movie Inside Out. We joke because it's basically, the Bleep for little kids. Um, and that's, you see all these emotions running around in your head. Somebody has to be in charge. So the conscious awareness is the corralling of the crazies in your head
Hmm.
and being in charge of them. And so being able to say, no, I'm not going to run that one because that's not going to end well. And it actually isn't true. And, there's all these questions that you can say. Is it true that my boyfriend would call me a cow? No. So then I don't really need to respond with, you asshole, you just called me a cow, because he didn't actually do that. So it's just conscious awareness. It sounds like there's some trick. And the trick is, hey, guess what? Start paying attention to the crazies that are in your head before they come flying out of your mouth.
So let's talk about crazies in a different direction, because you were for a while, and you may still be, a woman in the know. You had the answers,
Right.
and
Until you
then
didn't.
it seemed like yes, the sacred cow is you didn't have all the answers.
Right. Well, I think the interesting thing is that we all have all the answers.
Hmm.
We really do. Like, think about it. Most of the time, we know what to do, but we don't choose that because it's not feeding our belief systems and our emotional machine,
Our chemistry.
our chemistry. So, and we get to a place where, you get to be my age. I don't know how old you are, but I'm 45. We get up there in our 30s even, and we're kind of running on autopilot.
Hmm.
We've kind of, we're on, the brain is now running amok, pulling out all this old data, and you're just like, okay, yeah, that's easy. Okay. Oh, yeah, I'll get mad because my brain is telling me to do that right now because it put all these crazy pieces together that said my boyfriend just called me a cow. So let's run with that. So it's like lazy brain. And so you really, I do, I mean, I actually think we do all know, because if you get unlazy and you start to be conscious and thoughtful, then you go, oh, I really don't want to have a fight with my boyfriend because I know he didn't just call me a cow. So I don't think I'll do that. Oh, it's not actually that hard. It's just that it requires work. And
Mhm.
we've gotten really late. And so do I think everybody knows? I think, do we know all the 12 steps to this, or do we know which Hindu goddess does that? Who cares? We all really truly know how to live, but our brain has gotten lazy and is just running with a program that's not serving us.
Mhm.
So when we can get in charge of our brain, what I realized is like, wow, I do know, you know.
So in the book, you talk about attachment. So and you talk about packing things up and
Mhm.
moving out, something that my wife and I are extremely intimately familiar with.
Right,
We actually packed everything up, and almost none of it came with us. Um,
right.
what can you tell us about attachment and letting go?
So my new motto this week, I found
Yes.
a necklace in I was away this weekend, and I found this necklace, and on it it has a nail
Hmm.
and a little medallion. On one side it says Que sera sera,
Yeah.
and on the other side it says let go or be dragged. Um and I thought, that's true. So the thing about attachments
Hmm.
to me that's really interesting is that, first of all, there's a lot of guilt and shaming around having stuff. Because in the spiritual world, you're not supposed to have any attachments to anything, and that's bad and that's very unspiritual. And that really was one of those disconnects for me. That and like kill the ego are two of the most frustrating
The
spiritual
the first
buzzwords.
one can lead to poverty consciousness, which isn't good for anybody.
Right. Well, and then what for me, what I realized, it's like it's not about whether or not you have stuff. Like I have a lot of stuff. Even and I've gotten rid of a lot of stuff, and I'm good at getting rid of stuff, but I'm also good at keeping stuff. But for me, what was really important was understanding what the stuff represented.
Aha.
So, what does it mean? I have this mug. It's my favorite mug. It's got little owls on it. It's
Hoo-hoo.
very cute. I got in Harmony. Like, and did I need to buy this mug? No, because I probably have like 25 other mugs in my cupboard, right? But this mug represented something to me, and it was meaningful.
Hmm.
And so, but tomorrow, if the mug were to break, I would be sad because I like the mug, but I wouldn't be devastated because I would still have the meaning. So that to me is what attachment is. It's like, you can let go of stuff that is no longer, stuff, physical stuff.
Yeah.
Remember the meaning of it for you. But also, you have to realize that it's not the stuff that's giving you anything. You, once again, are attaching the meaning to the stuff. So that's why for me, it's like, well, if I have it, great. If I don't have it, great, because I always have the meaning. Everything is here. So that like got rid of my concern around attachment, my guilt around having stuff or not having stuff. Because we like stuff. Like I'm kind of attached to my kids. You know, I kind of like them. They're kind of cool. They're fun. We there's this thing of like this idea that if you're attached, you're going to suffer. Attachment means suffering. And that's true if you have an unhealthy attachment to something because you don't understand that it's not the thing, it's you.
I
Does that
love it
make
in
sense?
I love it in the attachment chapter when you're actually talking about your daughter who very it seems like conscious, maybe even conscious pregnancy, conscious each step of the way, the
Right.
music playing, everything going, and um, she didn't. In one particular occasion, she said something. Well, you share.
Okay. Right. Well, the thing is, like, one of the things that happens, of course, when you have kids is you have a story about who they're going to become,
Hmm.
right? And I'm living in this, country woods, and I'm going to give birth to like the most spiritual cherub baby in the planet, right? And she's going to float and levitate and all that kind of stuff. And so when she's born, she's a firecracker. My daughter's 11 now, and she's still a firecracker. She even said to me the other day, to go back to your lack consciousness. Well, I'll finish the story and then I'll tell you where this story led to because I think it's really important is that so I'm, got the wooden toys and, all the things that you're supposed to have that are spiritual and I'm trying to get her to clean up the playroom one day. And I'm singing the song, clean up, everybody do your share. And she looks at me and she goes, ugh, and she's 3. She goes, ugh, I can hardly wait till I'm older and I can pay someone to do this. And I was like, who are you? And it was this moment of realization. And just recently, she said to me, we were talking about something, and she goes, I want to be rich. And it's funny because I said that to a few of my friends, and they're like, oh, that's not good. And I'm like, actually, why isn't that good? Why am I teaching my daughter, don't try to be rich, don't try to be successful, don't try to have what you want in life? That's her, it's who
Mhm.
she is. So, and I had decided that that wasn't spiritual. And it really probably in some way impacted her. Now I tell her all the time, I'm like, well, if that's really what you want, go for it, girlfriend, rock on, do that, because that's who she is. So I had to let go of my attachment around the story of who I wanted her to be
Mhm.
versus loving this being for who she really is. And that's that to me, I didn't let go of my daughter. I didn't there's this detachment where I don't care. Let que sera, sera, be whatever you're going to be. I don't think that's possible for any human. But if I can say I care about this person enough to allow her to be exactly who she needs to and wants to be, and I'm going to guide her the best I can, there's still attachment there, but it's not attachment. Does that make sense?
That does make some sense, and it
Yeah.
makes it a lot easier because you can love your daughter, but there's probably no way you can make her into what you want her to be.
You know what? And that's part of most what frustrates the bejesus out of most parents is that most of the time we're trying to turn our kids into something they're not.
Hmm.
And, we got to let them be who they are. Just like they have to let you be who you are. It's hard, but to me, it was the biggest letting go that I've done. Letting go of my kids without letting go of my kids, if you know what I mean.
Yes, yes. So now let's jump into the lack part. You said there was an important point with
Uh,
lack.
well, the thing about it was that when my daughter was talking about wanting to be rich,
Yes.
you know, I know my daughter. She's the most caring, kind-hearted, giving kid I know. I mean, there's lots of them, but she's also loving and kind. I mean, I always call her the animal whisperer. She can come out into my backyard and all the creatures will come and sit with her and talk. I mean, like seriously, it's
Wow.
crazy. Um, so she's got a beautiful heart. But you know what? She's growing up in a reality that is consumer driven and she sees it everywhere. And so for me to sit there and say having money is bad, all I'm setting her up for is failure to succeed later on in her life.
Hmm.
I tell her, well, money doesn't mean success. And she knows that. But she also knows that if she has a lot of money, she can do whatever she wants because that's the way society is created. That's the way the world is. Money is with you. When you have money, you have peace. I mean, you look at all these people, wealthy people who are spiritual, they're still spiritual, but they can go to Maui whenever they want. And that's a nice thing to do. And for me to tell her, don't do that because it's bad, is setting her up for lack consciousness. Why can't I teach her how to be connected to her heart and to be conscious and thoughtful and have what she needs to do what she wants in life? There's nothing wrong with having both.
I like that because you're not setting her up for the internal tug of war.
Right. It's like, you know, know why. What I work on with my kids is just know why you want something. Like this is the big thing with the law of attraction. Everybody makes their vision boards and they put that they want to be a size 2 and they're never going to be a size 2. So when she says to me, Mom, I really want this toy,
Yeah.
it's not, oh, you don't need that. It's, well, what is it that's going to fulfill in you? Yeah. So understanding, why do you want what you want? And so like for my daughter, if she says, I want this toy, I just want her to understand that it's whatever pleasure or joy she's getting out of the toy, she's creating.
Hmm.
And so, but there's nothing wrong with wanting the toy. There's nothing wrong with that. Just as long as you realize that you could still have joy without the toy. And she's pretty good about that stuff. She gets it. But so that's the distinction. It's like when people say to me, they put Mercedes on their vision boards. It's sort of like, well, what does the Mercedes represent? And do you have that without the Mercedes? And when you can say, yes, I have that without the Mercedes, then I say, go buy the Mercedes. But if you don't have that and the only way you're going to get it is to buy the Mercedes, then you should not be buying that Mercedes.
Or you're going to need a second Mercedes and a third.
Or you have a third Mercedes. all sorts of other stuff to go with it. I mean, that's just how it rolls.
Hmm.
It's just how that's how the law of attraction works. Just so, if you don't mind, we're gonna walk for a second because my battery on my computer is dying. It's
All
like, oh my
right.
God,
So
we've been having a powerful conversation. We're just sucking the life out of everything.
I like it.
Um,
While you're going,
this, this
um,
is my little house.
excellent, beautiful. Ooh, that's beautiful hanging up there.
There's my Ganesh. Can you see him? I don't know. Oh, I see a nice T. There's
Where's he?
Ganesh.
Oh, Ganesh.
Hi, Ganesh.
Woohoo!
And this is my friend got me this cow. It's a lot of fun.
Oh, wow. A sacred cow.
It's a sacred cow. So, I mean, but see, this is what my whole book is about. It's just that I call them sacred cows because it's also just about getting real clarity on what this stuff means and how it can really make a difference in your life, like the law of attraction. Because when I understood that everything that I was seeking
Hmm.
was this external stuff that I'm seeking was really just me trying to feed the needs. God, I want a Mercedes, so that's feeding my whole fear of success and being accepted. And once I have a Mercedes, I'll get that. Once I can go, oh, there's this really, it's funny, in the spiritual world and in the regular world, we're told to pursue happiness,
Yeah.
seek enlightenment, find balance.
Uh-oh, I
But
see the key word that's a problem in this.
so what happens is that, but the biggest sacred cow of the whole spiritual world is that
Hmm.
everything that you're looking for is within you.
Yeah.
So if everything that I'm looking for is within me, I don't have to seek, pursue, or find it. I have it. So now I just see I have abundance. I have success. I have these things. And I'd like a Mercedes because that's fun. Oh, okay, cool. Do you know what I'm saying? Like it's
Yeah.
a totally different power stroke. Like you've let go of that need that these things are going to do anything for you.
I
And
think
when you can do that, the whole lack consciousness goes away.
exactly what I was going to say. No, that's much better from you than from me.
Yeah.
So, um, on that line, okay, so we're letting go, and when you let go, I mean, it's like the old adage of you're trying to date, and when you go looking for somebody, you never find them. When you say you don't need that person, boom, there they are.
Right, right. Well, and it's true and on every level. It is true on every level. And it's the hardest thing for anyone to friggin' do, for God's sake, to let go. Because I'm like a type A control person too. Like I have to have everything organized and planned and figured out. So for me, there was a lot of judgment around that. Like people always used to say, like, you're too controlling, you want everything to be a certain way. And so I had a lot of judgment in myself. And I've really worked on being able to have my type A personality
Hmm.
because but to realize like, oh, I'm planning and organizing because I like it. But I'm also very aware that it could go a different way. Something else could happen. And so it's the letting go of the outcome, but still being willing to do the work and holding the dream and saying, my dream is I want this movie to happen.
Hmm.
And I've got to do this and this and this and this and this to get there. But if that movie falls apart, which happens, then that's just part of the process, and I'm okay with that too.
How do you deal then? Because you talk in the book about one of the sacred cows being screwing up. How do you deal with the fear of not being able to hold it all together, or the fear of something getting messed up?
Well, first of all, I think this comes with age. But if you look back on our lives, we've survived a lot.
It's true.
We've screwed up
We're
a
still
lot.
here.
And we're still here. I wrote this poem. It's on my website. It's from Mantra Magazine, where a teacher once said to me, I want you to imagine your worst nightmare, your
Hmm.
worst fear coming true. And I want you to really, because if you close your eyes and you imagine having a strawberry, your brain does the same thing as if you were really eating a strawberry. So you can really have an experience without leaving your chair. And so I went through the process of living out my worst fear. And it was gut-wrenching. And took me 10 hours, and I sobbed and I screamed and I cried and I let every possible horrible thing that could happen, and I saw it happening. And it was exhausting. And then I went to sleep. And then I woke up the next day, and the first thing I thought is, oh, I'm still here.
Hmm.
And yeah,
That's
I'll
powerful.
just have to okay, so that happened and now I just have to rebuild from there. One of the greatest things that happened to me in my life was getting divorced. Because if I hadn't gotten divorced,
Yeah.
I would be still where I was and really unhappy. But in getting divorced and blowing up every aspect of my life, I finally had gave myself permission to recreate from a new space. Now, is that a fully enlightened space? No, because the other thing I've given myself permission is like there is no end game. There's no end.
Yeah.
The journey does not end. You just die in the middle of it sometimes. That's what happens.
To be
Um,
continued, maybe.
right. Maybe, maybe not. So the fact that for me, the rush,
Mm-hmm.
because I was always in a rush to get there.
Yep.
Now it's like, oh, well, okay.
There's
So
no there.
there's no there to get to. So if everything comes crashing down, then everything comes crashing down. It's like, oh, okay. Now I'm going to do this because what else am I going to do? You know, there's this funny little meme that always floats around Facebook. My honey sent it to me one day. He said, I hate to ruin the ending, but everything is going to be okay. And that's another one of my mantras. It's like, look, you know what? It helps me not take everything so seriously. That's why my book is so silly and funny. I try to be funny because like we take so much so seriously. And there's things that we should take seriously, but you know, getting cancer, you know, death, the death of a loved one. These are processes that we have to go through. But if you can hold on in the midst of all that, a tiny bit of your sense of humor
Mm-hmm.
and a little reminder of, look, this is a now, and this is an experience, and boy, baby, are you in it, but it's gonna be okay. That's where that peace that we're all looking for. To me, that's my peace.
Holding on to that centered moment no matter what. Wow, they're all crashing down around me.
Oh, are you getting a thunderstorm?
No, no, I'm saying that holding
Right,
on to that piece when it is crashing down all around you.
right. You're right. Yeah,
So,
because you know we've gone through it a lot. A lot. I mean, in your life, look, I love to tell people, especially when they're having this I can't do this moment,
mhm.
just to say, okay, just take a minute and look at your life and look at what you've done with your life. Whatever it is. I'm not talking about, you know, you climbed Mount Everest or these grand things. Just look at the little things in your life. First of all, most of us are lucky we even survived our 20s, right? So we didn't come out with it with, I mean, I always say I'm amazed I didn't come out with a drug addiction or a venereal disease, right?
Mhm.
You know, so like, look at what you've accomplished. You can totally do this. And you might say, this is the hardest thing that I've ever done. And it might be, but you've done so much before that last thing was the hardest thing you'd ever done. And you did that too,
True.
you know?
So, what would three, if you have three, three key takeaway pieces of advice or words of wisdom you would give people?
Let go and laugh. It's only life and everything is going to be okay.
Woohoo!
There you go. I laugh a lot more, even when sometimes when it's wildly inappropriate. I just start giggling because I just think this is a trip. Like I get up every morning and I'm like,
Mhm.
wow, this is crazy. How, like I get to do this again? Okay,
And then you laugh.
here we go. And then I laugh and then I'm like, all right, let's go. What trouble am I going to get in today? What cow manure am I stepping in? Will I get that shit off my shoe or no? Or, you know, it's like you got to care
Mhm.
because that's important. But when you really get clear on what do you value and when you really realize that everything that we're doing is made up, like this is all made up, right? Everything is just made up. Then you can kind of step back and go, oh, I have a little bit more calmness around this because, you know, that fight that I was going to have with my boyfriend or that fight that I had with my boyfriend was really shitty, but I learned a couple things about myself and I'm ready to, you know, that was then and this is now. And you can just kind of move on or wherever you're at. It's not the one great thing about in Buddhism
Yeah.
is the idea of impermanence. Nothing ever stays the same. Nothing ever, things are always in motion. Things will always move. And if you can just chill out a little and get a little more conscious awareness, you have a little bit more say in where it's moving to.
Do you have a one last mantra?
God, I've got so many. Right now it's let go or be dragged.
Yes.
Laugh, it's only life. Those are
Yeah.
my two big mantras. And have some fun. Like have some
Yay.
fun. I love having fun. Make this fun.
We can do that.
It doesn't have to be so serious, you know.
Now
Go hang
that's
out
it.
with kids.
That's interesting. It's something. Well, kids are taught for a while to have fun, and then most of them are taught now you've got to get serious, grow up.
Right. I tell my kids all the time, you're gonna have to grow up but you don't have to take everything so seriously, you know. And you don't have to do what anybody tells you to do. I failed miserably as a parent in one aspect is because I told my kids, don't ever do anything anyone tells you to do without you first thinking about it for yourself. I should have added, except me.
Oops.
Okay. I have great kids who I think to myself as a parent, I'm totally going to screw it up.
Hmm.
Like I clearly going to mess this up a couple of times at least. If I can just get them to 18 having learned emotional intelligence,
Yes.
I've done okay.
That's better than most parents even think to go for. There, it's grades or getting to school or
I just want them to learn how to think. That's the one thing I think most of us are not taught. It's the weirdest thing on the planet. We're born, we're given
Mhm.
this brain, and we think we're teaching each other how to think, but we're really just teaching each other how to be afraid. We're not actually taught how to use, we're taught how to use the computer, we're taught how to use a toilet, but nobody ever really sits kids down and goes, all right, this is how your brain works. If you see that thing, you have a thought, and like that's what I want my kids to know.
Okay,
Like
so this is real juicy. How do we think?
most of the how you here's what happens. You have an experience. That
Hmm.
experience creates an emotional response, chemical response in your body, which is imprinted
Hmm.
into your brain. Your brain gathers that up and says, "Oh, stove hot." That's a memory you want to keep. Sometimes you're having a memory where you run outside and you're 5 years old and you've just drawn this great picture and your mommy's on the phone and you go, mommy, 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 look at my painting, and mommy turns around and goes, I don't want to see your painting right now, leave me alone, because they're on the phone, and you just heard mommy doesn't like my paintings imprinted. So I'm not a good artist, I'm not worthy of love. These things just keep repeating, repeating, repeating. What we need to be able to realize is as soon as possible to understand, oh, mommy did not mean I was a bad painter. Mommy was on the phone. And so that's how to think. Because right now it's just imprint, go, imprint, go. And we don't take the time to assess those imprints and go, wait a second, 4 days ago, I just imprinted that, guys in red shirts are bad. And I actually don't want to keep that one. Clear out the house. You know, we have to, like, you clear your hard drive every once in a while. We got to clear our brains. And that's what I tell my kids. They each have little devices. And I tell them all the time, you know what? You know how you clean your device sometimes? Go into your brain and clean some of those crazy thoughts that you've got. Just get rid of them. Clean them out. That's how that's how to teach someone how to think.
I love it. It sounds like mindfulness with some defragging going on.
Right. And that's what we need. It's so unsexy and unspiritual, but it's true. It's like, oh, wow, I picked up a lot of weird stuff that I don't need to carry. Baggage. It's like, you know.
Yeah.
And then asking questions. Like I tell my daughter all the time, like, if somebody says something to her and she has an emotional response, ask question. Is this person really want to hurt me? Because most people aren't really intending to be mean. Ask them, or ask yourself, does this person really mean to hurt me, or is it that just fitting in with some story I have about my self-worth, and maybe that's not really what they're saying. When you do those two things along with keeping track of your thoughts, life is so much better.
You're not being controlled by your emotions or your chemistry.
Or your belief systems.
Yeah,
You
your
are now,
filter.
I tell my daughters if she needs to be the girl in charge of her brain. Same with my son. I'm like, you're gonna be the boy in charge. Who's in charge right now? And I ask him that when they're having an emotional meltdown on something. I'm like, okay, so who's running this ship right now? Who's in charge? We're so told to, like, this is how you have to think, and this is, and we're so caught up in all this. And so just say, hey, who do you want to be in charge? Your emotions,
Hmm.
or your intelligent soul, or your intelligent spirit, or your intelligent heart, who, if you listen to, knows what the heck, like we were saying earlier, when you listen to that one part of you, they know.
That's the secret.
Mhm.
So, on that note, a wrap up question I'd like to ask all of our guests, which is what brings you the greatest happiness, or what I call the woohoo factor?
That is a really hard question to answer because I spend a lot of time in woohoo. I do. Like my daughter gets frustrated with me because she's kind of experiencing emotion and
Mhm.
testing out how this whole works. She's in years 11. She's a girl. All this stuff is going on. And she says like, "Mom, you are like perpetually happy." And I'm like, "Yeah, I kind of am." So living life brings me that because I am so grateful that I get to live and that I've somehow been lucky enough to early enough figure out that if I do what I love, I'll be happy. And that if I do what I love, I'll be taken care of. And if I do what I love in service of other people, I'll be provided for. That is like awesome. It's awesome.
What more could you ask
So
for?
I'm always kind of woohoo,
Woohoo!
woohoo. Even when I'm mad, even when I'm hurting or having an emotional time, I still sit back and go, how lucky are you that you get to have this experience?
Wow. Wow. I think we all could use that step back.
Yeah. That's the thing. I mean, Jesus, this is the cool. I mean, if you think about why we're here,
Hmm.
you know, we're here to have an experience. That's what we're doing here. That's what this reality, that's what this plane, however you guys want to all call it, is. That's what this is. This is the plane of experience. So have an experience. But what happens to a lot of people when they get to their deathbed is they realize, wow, I wasted it. Don't waste it.
They played it safe.
They played it safe. I am no longer interested in playing it safe.
Me
And
as
that means
well.
I'm going to fall down a lot and make a lot of mistakes and piss people off and I'm going for it.
It's a perfect way to live. I was traveling around the internet recently. I think I saw it on Yahoo or something. The number one thing that successful people do or successful CEOs do, and it's they make decisions quickly, and then they're slow to change them. So they're okay making a mistake, but then they're going to see if they can make it work once they
Right.
once they've
Right.
gone for it.
Right. Well, and the thing is, again, it gets back to that space of like, there's no end game. Like we keep thinking, well, once I do this, then everything will be fine. But it won't be because then you have to do something else. So, you know, if we hold back and we wait for that, right moment, that we'll miss it. Sort of like people say to me, well, we're waiting to have kids. Well, for what? Because we want to have money. We want to have these things. Those are all very practical things to think about. But at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. Do what you need. You have to be intelligent. You have to make wise choices and you have to be strategic. I don't think there's anything wrong with being strategic,
Hmm.
especially in business. But when I don't, I have projects that come and go all the time. I was an actress when I was a little kid and I learned how to take rejection really well. I learned how that to be told, no, you're not right for it and to move on. So it's like, okay, that didn't work. What can I learn from that? Take it to the next. I mean, I'm 45 years old and I've got a lot of life left to live. And I just want to enjoy it. And I just want to have the wildest, most fun, most unique and interesting experience I can provide for this soul while I'm here. And I'd rather screw up a lot because that's the only way you're really going to do that.
That's the most powerful thing in the world.
It
Giving
really is.
yourself permission to screw up, which you have a whole
Yes.
section on in the book.
Right. Yeah. It's like fail. Fail at I would rather fail at everything than only
Hmm.
succeed at one thing.
Mm.
Y- And here's the thing about failure that I think
Yep.
is so funny. We're also afraid of failure, you know? Um, but once and part of the game in My Life Sucks is one of the things I tell you to do is that admit you fail, like own it, take on, like I am a friggin' failure. and just say, yes, I am. Because at that point, once you accept, okay, I'm totally a failure, then there's nowhere else to go but up, right? You're
Yeah.
already a failure. Well, it's like, well, I'm already a failure. So I got nothing to lose. When you let go of all the things, well, if I don't do this, I'll lose this or I'll lose that. Okay. There's a quote. I think it's Joseph Campbell, and I'm going to paraphrase the quote because I can't remember it exactly, but he basically says something like, what are you willing to give up in order to have the life that you deserve? Or what are you willing to let go of? You know? And that's a great question. It's like, well, that goes back to the attachment. I mean, I have all this great, I love my little house, love my little car, love my little kids, love all this stuff. But if it comes to a point, well, except for my kids, I'm keeping them. But, you know, if it comes to a point where I don't have this house anymore, then I don't have the house anymore. I always have me. I always have my heart, you know. What are you willing to, and if it means if to get rid of this house means I get to do something to the next level, then bye-bye house.
Why not?
Right?
No, that's letting it all go. So
Yeah.
maybe that's the ultimate thing, is that we have to be willing to let go of ourselves in order to fully experience this life.
Well, and what that means is you have to be willing to let go of the story that you've told yourself about who you are.
Yeah. One more sacred cow.
It's all a story.
Thank you so much for joining us today. This has been a true pleasure. Do you have a website that you'd like to direct people to?
Yeah, people can go to Betsy, Betsy, Chasse, CHASSE.net, BetsyChasse.net.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And for more on this show and upcoming shows, and I'm sure you can get her book on her website. You can also find a link to it on our website. Go to inspirenationshow.com. Well, Betsy, thank you so much. For everyone out there, this is Michael Sandler saying,
Thank you.
Have fun, tip those sacred cows.
That's my puppy. He's all getting excited. Say
Oh, puppy!
That's Moose. That's Moose.
Everybody, you need a puppy.
Everybody needs a moose in their life.
We've got to hang on another 10 seconds and say hi to Moose here. Hi, Moose.
Yeah.
For everyone out there and for Moose,
Yeah.
shine bright.
Bye. I shine bright. Bye.
Bye. Bye, Moose.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hi everyone, thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed it, be sure to like below. Also leave your comments, have some real fun with it. Subscribe to our channel where you're going to get more great videos, more interviews coming up. And check out our website, inspirenationshow.com. That's where you'll find tips, blogs, information, videos you won't find anywhere else, and useful and helpful resources to really help you kickstart your life and to shine bright. Thanks so much again. Thank you for your support. Like, comment, subscribe. See the website. Thanks so much and have fun. Of course, shine bright. Woohoo!